Podcasts brought to you by Real Terrier Radio.
So it's November 2019 and we have a general election in the United Kingdom, if you haven't heard. So we're going to be talking about the general election a little bit. We're going to talk about Welsh independence. Is it a possibility? Can Wales, that's never been an independent state of its own, because in the Middle Ages, after the Romans, it was a set of individual kingdoms. So can these kingdoms actually be one nation or a union of kingdoms? We'll talk about this and my views, and we're going to talk about the dreadful election campaign put up by the current Conservative Party. Also, we'll look at some other parties and we'll also talk about what's going on with Brexit and the whole handling of that. And then we might touch up on Prince Andrew. But you're listening to Around the World today, here on Podcasts by Real Terrier.
Podcasts brought to you by Real Terrier Radio. Around the World today, here on Real Terrier Radio.
Hello and welcome to Around the World today, here on Real Terrier, and with me, Terry Davis. I forgot that bit. Hello, and my normal confused self. So yeah, it's been a while, but a lot's been happening in the news, hasn't it? And I haven't been able to keep up to do like a podcast and to talk about stuff or a topic, because there's been so many topics coming. So I thought in this episode we'll do a nice little long one. We'll talk about many different topics. So the first part we're going to talk about is, as I have it open on my screen right now, Welsh independence. So I'm Welsh. Hi. Actually, right now it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so it's Prynhawn or Croeso. And okay, so Wales, we've had this discussion before on other podcasts when I've talked about Wales. Wales isn't a part of England. We're our own country bordered onto England. We and England and Scotland and Northern Ireland are in something called the United Kingdom. But Wales is its own country. Please do not call the Welsh English. We don't like it. We don't at all. And okay, so we were given our independence from England in 1066 the first time round. After the, well, actually, the Cymry or the Welsh people go right back even before that. So, anyway, politically. Then in Wales is ruled as little kingdoms then. So sub-kingdoms, where I live was called the Kingdom of Deheubarth. And I'm actually related to the royal family of Deheubarth. So, and all of the princes were related, so, of these regions. So I'm actually related to the royals. And the funny thing is, from Deheubarth, what I find really fascinating, and I'd love if I could go back into history and I could talk to one person, it would be Henry VII. Because I would want to ask him, why did he land his forces when he invaded to you know, when he came home to Wales after his exile, before he went to the battle, where he killed Richard III, the King of England, and a Welshman was king. Why did he do it? From Pembroke. Now, the Tudors are related to... So, the ancestor I'm related to was the sister of the ancestor the Tudors are related to. So our grandfather, or 20-something great-grandfather, was the king of the Huber, Rhys ap Tudor, or it's the Welsh way of spelling it, but he was the king who was killed by the English. Not the English! What I find quite fascinating is, how didn't they die off? Well, in those days you married! Or as in Rhys ap Tudor's son, who took over, who, is my relation. Basically... Oh no, I'm related to his daughter, Nesfach, who's princess. And there's a few tales about her as well. She was kidnapped by the Irish. It's all good! It's all good! Because... from what I've read, the Irish give her back. It's alright though. Her husband... Or was it her brother? No, her brother, sorry, who was her brother, who was the heir, did one better, and the English, as a deal of taking control of South Wales, decided to send the De Huber family, or the De Nervo family, as they're called, to right across to Ireland to rule parts of Kildare, and up until this day there are members of that family who still sit in the House of Lords as the Duke of Kildare, or they're under their English titles, but they also hold the Irish title because, even though the state don't recognise them, they're still there, aren't they? So back to it. So I'd love to go and ask him, why did Henry VII choose Pembroke? Yes, he was born at Pembroke Castle. And the funny thing is, Pembroke Castle, like many castles in Wales from that time, were owned by his family. So, was it... I like to think that it's Henry VII... yes, he was born in Pembroke. Yes, he's Welsh. Yes, his family was from there. Everyone knows their family history, and then it wasn't that far back. Do you know what I mean? From where it is today. So, did he know? Did he do this to show the English, well, you might have won once? And about this whole thing about the De Huber family, I'm also remembered of a Welsh theologian called Gerald of Wales, who was to be named by a pope as Bishop of St. David's, but was never allowed to take up this position because of who he was related to, because he was related to the ruling family of South Wales. So basically it was a no-no. This was after they went to Ireland, so they couldn't have him back in a position like the Bishop of St. David's at those times. So he kept getting passed over, but he became Dean of Brecon. So I like that, because Brecon is in the diocese of Swansea and Brecon, and I live in Swansea and I attend churches in the diocese that he was dean. Do you know what I mean? It's quite rewarding to know that a family member has been before. It is quite... If you are going to look into your Welsh nationalism, your Welsh history, or your Welsh genealogy, if you do find out, like you do a DNA test on Ancestry, and you find out you're Welsh, look into the Welsh history. So many people have different views on Welsh history, and the Welsh state as well. And this is what we're going into now, is the Welsh state. Now, what constitutes the Welsh state? Did you know that the laws of Wales, done by Hywel Dda... God, how can I remember this? Done by Hywel Dda. Hywel Dda is the first king, or he's the one basically that split off all of the principalities because he inherited them. So he split them to his sons when he died. Nice way of doing it, because he wrote a will and he said, this son will have that one, that son will have this one. And, you know, over time the sons fought, and yeah. And then the cousins, and, you know. So he made laws that all of the states followed. So everyone in Wales had the same law. But he didn't want to control the monarchy in a way that basically every part of Wales would have the same monarchy, because he'd know that it'd become feudal, and you can't really in those days know what's going, control South Wales but be in North Wales and vice versa. So you couldn't have a state, so you had to have 6 little states. But then, you know, the first one to actually put us as one country, and it took hundreds of years to do again, was actually after the English. After the rebellion failed of that rebellious chap Llywelyn, I think. I don't really bode well with rebellions. You know, just ask me about the Extinction Rebellion. After Llywelyn ap Gruffudd in 1282 led a conquest of the last independent Welsh kingdom. Okay, so basically Edward I of England didn't like this Welsh revolt and decided he was going to impose English rule. Sorry, I know I'm doing weird voices, but yeah, if I didn't, it would become too serious, and I don't want this to be a serious podcast today. I want it to be upbeat and I want it to be fun. So we're going to have a funny podcast day, okay? Okay. And I did hear for you all to say okay, but as I'm recording this, you're not going to do that. So we're moving on slowly. We'll get somewhere. This is a dyspraxic. Remember, my mind is quite jumbled as a dyspraxic. So we'll get there in the end, people. Plus, it's some good listening for you. And I know that, you know. Alright, so, yeah, it was after the rising in... the Gwaed Rising, and then for 200 years Wales was ruled past as like part of England. Then in 1400 to 1415, which was we were briefly allowed independence again because of the Gwaed Rising. It restored, but then in the 16th century, Henry VIII himself, who was Henry VII's son. So he was Welsh, basically. He was from Welsh extraction. Passed laws in Wales to fully incorporate Wales into the Kingdom of England. So before that, we were run as a colony of England. And in some of the laws, what's quite interesting, it refers to Wales as a colony, but there's no law actually, from what I've seen, that stops. They just stop referring to us as a colony. So I don't know if there's been a law to change what we are, but we were fully incorporated into the. Maybe the acts of union didn't incorporate, but it's just funny. No one knows really when did Wales stop being a colony of England. Now, us being a colony would mean that we are actually, it doesn't mean, but we are England's oldest colony. But now, as we're a member of the United Kingdom, we stop being a colony. So when we were a colony, if we were still a colony today, we would have the same rights as Canada to have our own government, keep the Queen as Queen, but everything devolved to us. And devolution is something that we will talk about today, because we go into it a bit actually in a second. So there's some more history about Wales. So after these acts of union were alright, we're going to call this part of it the incorporation, because the acts of union come later in our history of Great Britain. So after the incorporation of Wales into England, so this union of Wales being part of England, so if you see a law now passed into British law, it comes up as England and Wales as a criminal statute. So England and Wales is a legal jurisdiction, shall we say. This was always, for centuries, to be seen as an advantage for the people of Wales, as it then offered opportunities to the Welsh gentry. Not only to the Welsh gentry, to the Welsh lower classes too, who could now become judges. Well, yes, in those days, judges of the peace... justices of the peace, and members of Parliament and Westminster. But, it also, before it said in the law, basically, in English law, that Welsh people were the slaves of the English. And this just tried to change it around. But yeah, Henry VIII went one better with the Welsh language laws. Now, I'm not advocating what he did, but I get it. There were more people in England than there were in Wales. Now, yes, it isn't known if Henry VIII or even Henry VII could speak Welsh, but thinking about where Henry VII's family came from in Wales, and where they went and they travelled, because Henry VII's father himself was one of the North Wales princes' equerries. So, North Wales speaks heavily even today in Welsh. So one would have thought that someone would have taught Henry VII Welsh. There's also tales of Queen Elizabeth I speaking Welsh, and she loved the Welsh too, because it was the home of her grandfather, as she said. So I'm not sure. I personally think that these acts were just to were only ever meant to be for in a formal process, such as courts, such as, in Parliament. In life, you could speak Welsh, so at home and stuff. I think it was predominantly because more people spoke English than spoke Welsh. Now, if it was the other way round, I think we would be speaking Welsh today, and this podcast would be coming to you in Welsh, because most of the world would speak Welsh. However, Welsh is on the rise, by all accounts. Don't quote me to that. However, the belief that Wales should be an independent state really came about again in the 19th century. The first recorded use of the Welsh word for nationalism, and I'm not even going to attempt to say it because my Welsh is quite appalling, was in 1858. And this was with a law called the Sunday Closing Wales Act 1881. And this is the first piece of legislation just for Wales. This showed that Wales, and acknowledged that Wales had a different political legal charter from the rest of the English state. Now, how good is that? In 1881, a law was passed saying that Wales, basically because this law was passed, this law said that Wales can have different stuff than England and it will be fine. In Scotland, they were still passing laws just for Scotland. But they never up until then did it. From the 1600s up until now, we had to take English law, English rule. Then in 18 1886, Joseph Chamberlain proposed a home rule all around the United Kingdom. And in the same year, an organisation called Cymru Friod, or Young Wales Movement, was founded to further the cause. However, the goal was envisioned as a devolved assembly rather than a full independent state. And the movement collapsed in 1896. So this is what I'm going to be saying now, is that the movement would collapse normally in 1896, aimed at personal rivalries and rifts between representatives from North and South East and West Wales. So the old kingdoms, basically. Now, it's the same today. Assembly members not even assembly members, if you look at any comment to do with infrastructure spending and stuff, you'll see people from North Wales say, well, it always gets spent in Cardiff. You'll see people from Swansea and West Wales saying, it's always getting spent in... Do you know what I mean? It's, Wales is a bit, when it comes to it, still split. A couple of 100 years on. 100 something years on. 120 years on, I believe. So yeah, it ended. However, it wasn't the end of a devolved assembly. There was then very little interest in it, home rule, following the First World War. The focus on Welsh nationalist politics moved to the newly formed Plaid Cymru from 1926, although it took until the late 60s for Plaid to make its first breakthrough here in Wales. In 1956, a 250,000 word name petition calling for a parliament for Wales was produced. Few results though, but the declaration of Cardiff as a capital of Wales in 1955. Labour's 1959 commitment to appoint a Secretary of State for Wales. Creation of the Welsh Office in 1965, and then repealed the Wales and Barbaric Act of 1746 2 years later, seemed to demonstrate a growing nationalist impasse. However, heavily defeated for a proposed Welsh Assembly offered by Wales in the 79 devolution referendum, suggested that the vast majority of its inhabitants of Wales had no desire to see the country having a national future. So then we had the Conservative government, and we're not going to talk about politics today. We're going to talk about politics in the 80s and the 90s, and basically we had fracturism, selling off of the redundancy, selling off of national assets, Wales becoming poorer, strikes. I was born. So then it led to the 1997 referenda on devolution. So we got it won a narrow majority in 97 to have a Welsh Assembly. Very different. We had a new generation of Welsh MPs in Westminster and a broad consensus on the previously diverse issue of the Welsh language. However, people say that it may have been unnecessary following an election of a progressive Labour government. However, if you look at it today, it wasn't unnecessary because we have that cushion here in Wales that we don't feel the full, frank force of austerity that the English are feeling right now. Following the announcement in 2017, plans to hold a second referendum. Okay, so we're up to it. Now, from my point of view, and if you do want to read it, I was reading from online sources, so do Google and read and stuff like that. And from my point of view on this, how can a country that's never been a country, the people who put you as one country were the English, how can you advocate independence for something that hasn't been independence. Now, I can understand, like, the old kingdom of the Huber, so the Swansea Bay region rising up and saying, no. Do you know what I mean? We want to stay, we want our own thing. And I can see the regions rising up, because really the regions were the kingdoms. So I can see them saying, well, no. Do you know? And then, like... But... I can't really see an independent Wales. No, ask any of them, Plaid Cymru, what's your plan for independence? And it seems to me that they haven't learnt from Brexit. The bit for Brexit is Wales voted to leave. Yeah, I get that. But the bit they haven't learnt is, if you haven't got clear answers to something, how can you achieve Welsh independence? Ask them a clear question. Who's going to perform the defence for Wales? Who's going to... what's going to happen with the border? What is the Welsh border between Wales and England? Because, you know, it's changed a couple of times. The current border isn't actually the border, if you look back. So if we're going to get Welsh independence, does that mean that Wales gets its part of England back? That's been ruled as England. That was taken from us. You know, these are questions that need to be asked. Are we going to reform the United Kingdom to the way it was in the 1200s? You know, are we? So is Hereford going to become part of Wales? Liverpool? Chester? Then we need to seriously have a chat about, you know, how is this going to work? Wales at this moment in time doesn't have its own judiciary. So on day one, we would be without a judiciary. Are we going to keep the English judiciary until we get a Welsh judiciary set up? Are we going to transfer the Welsh judges to a new formed department? So there are no clear goals. What I personally think needs to happen is that we need to gain more power. So we need to take back the laws from Westminster, set up the departments, and then go to the Welsh people for independence. And Plaid Cymru coming out about independence votes right now because of Brexit and trying to use Brexit as the excuse. Plaid Cymru need to remember that Wales did vote to leave. Plaid Cymru signing up to go into an election pact with the Liberal Democrats has hurt Plaid Cymru, because Plaid Cymru isn't at leadership debates like they were at previous times. Joe Swinson is at leadership debates. Even Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP are at leadership debates. But Plaid Cymru are not. Now, make of it what you want, but that's my view on Welsh independence. Wales could never be independent until we get some answers. Questions. You know, so I have a friend who has just had a baby. He's English. His wife, I believe, is English. His son is Welsh. He was born in Wales. So, what about freedom of movement for that family? For his son's grandparents to come into Wales, you know, who would predominantly be English, to visit their grandson. What about the grandson going to England to visit their grandparents? How is this going to work for Welsh people and English people crossing the border? People say with Brexit about freedom of movement. At this moment in time, a Welsh person has the freedom to move between the United Kingdom, to live in Scotland, to live in Northern Ireland, to live in England, to live in one of the lovely British overseas territories. And to do this with the freedom of movement, so to be able to go without a passport, without any ID whatsoever, and just cross over and live there because you are a citizen. Now, basically, if Wales left the United Kingdom, that right is taken away. If Scotland leaves the United Kingdom, that right is taken away. The same with England and the same with Northern Ireland. The laws change. We're no longer British subjects, remember, we will be Welsh. So, how do we navigate this? If this makes sense. Do you know what I mean? There are serious questions that Brexit that show from using the anti-Brexit argument that Plaid Cymru and some of and even Yes Cymru are using what actually comes to my mind when it comes to Welsh independence. They really are not using their heads. They think that everything will be fine because they know that Wales at this moment in time won't vote independence, so they're not going to tell you, basically freedom of movement between England and Wales could be a bit, you won't be able to work. Welsh people today cross the border to go into England to work. Actually, I have another friend who has had another baby, and this time, he is Welsh. The baby's mother is English, and the baby was born in England. How does this work? Are the English going to deport? You can see what I mean, can't you? So many families have intertwined between here and there and there. So, but if we leave freedom of movement between and a hard border, soft border, and all of that all comes into it, what is quite shocking that the same arguments for Brexit are there for us leaving Wales, the UK. But anyway, that's my view on independence. We will talk next about should we have something? Should we keep up with politics? So let's talk about the general election, shall we? So as I said in the beginning, we are having a general election right now in the United Kingdom. For the life of me, could someone tell me? So there's been a story about Prince Andrew and the Epstein person. Alright, so, okay, yeah, it was wrong. He should never have had any contact after he went to jail. But he went to jail over a decade ago first. And we knew that Prince Andrew was friends with him a decade ago. But can you explain to me why, when the Conservative Party are having the worst election campaign, from what I can see, because today the Prime Minister has cancelled another leadership debate on Sunday, because he had a bad leadership debate on Tuesday. So basically he's cancelled the event. Make of that what you will. But when the Conservatives seem to be having something bad or doing something bad, I started to notice that the media actually publish stories about the royal family a lot more. And they don't show the royal family in the right light at all. Now, firstly, since when has this country become judge, jury and executioner? At the end of the day, Prince Andrew is answerable to the Crown. The Crown in this instance happens to be his own mother. A mother knows when their child is lying. And do you know what I mean? We don't know what goes on behind closed doors, so why we comment on it. But my point is that basically, whenever the Conservatives do something bad, so when Theresa May's deal was failing the House of Commons before she had to announce that she was going to step down, there were stories coming out about Prince Harry and Meghan not talking to Kate and Prince William. A couple of weeks ago, Boris Johnson was sacking MPs. Another story came out about Prince of Wales very worried about Prince Harry's mental health. Do you know what I mean? These kind of stories come out when the Conservatives seem to be, I don't know, what's the word, in disarray, and they need a distraction. Now, yes, the manifestos have come out, and we are going to have a podcast from next week about the manifestos, so do listen to it, because we will talk them over, myself and Terry Begley. It's going to be our election special podcast. We don't know what brand we're going to name this yet, but keep an eye out on our website and our Facebook, isn't it? But it just appalls me to think that people in this country, and I asked someone today, who are you going to vote for? He said Conservative, and I'm just like, really? Really? So, everyone blames the Labour Party for stopping Brexit. But Boris Johnson voted against this deal 3 times. Then he gets his deal over the line, they vote for it, and he says no. And pulls the deal. That's the 4th time. I'm sorry, but in what realm is it the Labour Party's responsibility? Firstly, as opposition parties, they've put up right a good opposition because Brexit is blocked. They've actually done their jobs, the opposition. It's not the opposition's job to get anything over the line and pass through the House of Commons. That's the government's job. The moment you can't govern is the moment that you should have stepped aside. Not change the leader. Now, obviously, a change of leader wasn't going to change anything in the House of Commons, was it? We've wasted the whole summer on a leadership campaign that we didn't need to have. We've wasted so much money and time because of the Conservatives. The last 9 years we've been under Conservative rule, not Labour, but nothing's got better for us, has it? And did you know, debunking the fact that the Conservatives are better in the economy, did you know since 1955, okay, so since 1955, now 1955 has a really great importance to me because that was the year my mother was born. So in my mum's lifetime, there has been 14 recessions. And, and contractions in Britain. Okay, 10 of which occurred under the Conservative governments. So that leaves 4 of which that occurred under Labour, proving that the Conservatives are even worse with the economy than Labour. Why should we trust them? You know, we can't. Quite frankly, I find it quite appalling that when we have people going to sleep on the streets tonight, that you have a Conservative government who are advocating tax cuts for the rich, but not advocating putting more money into, I don't know, shall we talk about this, like, housing? Or putting, council housing, sorry, because they are putting some more money into housing for people to be able to buy their first home. All well and good. Tell this to the people living on the streets who probably can't afford a home to rent. So why would they get the money to buy their own home in the first place? Tell it to the people who attend a food bank. Once again, if you have to attend a food bank, how in the hell are you meant to be able to afford, I don't know, to buy your own first house? No, you can't. So back to the person. So he said he's going to vote Conservative because of Brexit, because Labour and Jeremy Corbyn have stopped Brexit all the way. No, Boris Johnson, the ERG, have stopped Brexit. Okay, so anyone wondering why right now Brexit has stopped altogether? We've got this general election. It's like a delay tactic. There's something here, you know, that this whole, we need to get Brexit done. If the country really wanted to get Brexit done and the politicians really wanted Brexit to be done, do you really think that, you know, Brexit would be done by now? There's something in these reports that we ain't seeing, that the public are not seeing here, because there has been a change in the Conservative Party. The ruling party that had a majority up until the end of the summer could have got this over the line. Even if they put a three-line party whip and do you know what I mean? They had a majority of 310 with the DUP giving them 10 MPs. They could have got this over the party line if they wanted to. But they didn't want to. You know, the mess of the Conservative Party is what's causing Brexit problems. Not the other parties. It's not the other party's job to back up what the government is doing. It's actually their job to oppose what the government is doing. It's in the name. Leader of the opposition. The opposition. Opposition meaning putting up an opposition. Saying, no, we don't want this. We can do it a better way. But, you know, according to the media, they've been really bad at being in opposition. You've got to ask yourself, have they really? 9 years ago, let's look at the Conservative Party that came in 9 years ago. It wasn't split like it is now, was it? Let's look at the Liberal Democrats 9 years ago, you know, the ones who promised every student free tuition fees never came through, but actually what they did was increase the tuition fees through the roof. Yes, students don't forget stuff like that. And they help with austerity. It's now been proven that austerity wasn't actually needed. But again, the Tories again. Tax cuts for the rich, penalise the rest. That's all they care about. And I really do urge you, if you are voting, I'm not going to tell you any other parties or stuff like that and who I'm going to vote for or who you should vote for. But when you are voting, and this is how I do it, I don't know who I'm going to vote for yet. But I know I can't vote for a party that has made more people homeless in the last 9 years than previous parties did. Or the previous government did. I know I can't vote for a party that has actually made nurses, firemen, do you know what I mean? People in our emergency services attend food banks. I can't knowingly vote for this. I can't vote for a party whose leader writes an article calling black people Piccadillys, talking about people who wear hijabs as letterboxes. At the end of the day, my opinion about a hijab is that a nun wears a habit. Okay? Nuns wear habits, and you would never dare put a habit off a nun. So why do people think it's fine to take the mick, pull a hijab off a Muslim person? No, it's not fine. It's their religious cloth. So don't even go there with me. I don't like it. I can't vote for a party that a man called women who wear hijab, who are wearing what they believe to be their teachings, their religious teachings, you know, how a woman should dress, how a woman should be. You know, it's not for me to argue against their teachings of their religion, just like it's not for them to argue against my teachings of my religion. But at the end of the day, we are all here, and we all should respect each other. So for a man to be leading a political party, to wish to be our Prime Minister, who is actually our Prime Minister, to call women who wear this and choose to praise God in this way letterboxes? I'm sorry, but what universe do you think we're living in when the country is so divided because of the Conservatives? It would be fine to go and vote Conservative. I can't knowingly go out and vote for a party that has underfunded the NHS in England, underfunded the Welsh devolution settlement, the Scottish devolution settlement, the Northern Ireland devolution settlement. So, do you know what I mean? And this is before even thinking about Brexit and, you know, all the rest of it, all that this man has done. There's the lies, there's the cheating, there's, you know, he's meant to be a Conservative Prime Minister. Shall we talk about the meaning of conservatism? It means keeping to one's morals, one's country's morals, and, you know, all of this good family values. So that doesn't mean that getting married, so the sanctity of marriage. So that doesn't mean going out, getting married, shacking up, with that, do you know what I mean? Having many different affairs, children by different women, who you probably hardly see Prime Minister, and, you know, then get a divorce, shack up with the new, I don't know what to call her, bit of stuff, in Downing Street, living on the taxpayer mind, because Downing Street, yeah, when actually, a year ago, you had a wife. You were living with your kids. So, you know, he's already gone back on generations of the Conservative Party's teachings, haven't he? So much for him caring about the party, and this is even before we even go on to Dominic Cummings. But then we also have Labour Party and all of the stuff, what's going on with the Labour Party, and I find it really hard in this election to actually know who to vote for, but but it is a two-party race. I can't see the Liberal Democrats alliance or any of these little parties actually doing much. This is an election between Labour and Conservative. It's been framed this way. But what they were backing for, the Conservatives, were a Labour remaining, so they could batter Labour there. But because Labour has come out, and I find this policy really... Actually, I feel that the whole Brexit situation is David Cameron's fault. The government should have never got involved in the campaigning. The government, like in 1975, should have stayed out of it and enacted the will of the people. By now, we may have a Labour government. We may not have had this general election. We may have just left the European Union. If Brexit was ever meant to have worked, do you really think the Conservative Party, the leader of the Conservative Party, would have been allowed to do what he did and campaign against? This was Boris Johnson v David Cameron, so Boris Johnson could get where he is. But Brexit was never meant to be done, in my opinion, I don't think. I think this was just a game between, you know, the rich, and we were duped into it as pawns. I also believe that any deal that was come, because this went to the British people, if they want us to leave on a deal, well, this deal should be put back to us, the people. I don't believe Remain should be on the ballot. It should be deal or no deal. But, you know, that's not my... or stay the same, but that's Remain, isn't it? But, you know, it could even be, say, okay, you get a deal. It could be deal, no deal, renegotiate. Do you know what I mean? So there should be better options than Remain, and I don't believe Remain should be on the ballot, because it disheartens the people who actually did vote for Brexit the first time around. Yes, people have chosen differently. Yes, you know, people have woken up to the fact that it's going to have irreparable damage to the economy and to, you know, the country. But there again, no one knows what the impact actually is going to be, because no one's actually left the European Union before. And then you have people saying that we want to go back into a small, our empire days. If we really wanted to go back into our empire days, we would have done it with the Commonwealth. And we would have done it a long time before now. Because we have been, you know, the Commonwealth has been there for years. We would have been able to do it then. If anything, I personally believe that we turned our back on the Commonwealth when we joined the EU. We should have been enhancing the Commonwealth for world trade. A world trade deal. Because we would have been able to. With 52 member states rather than 27. But, you know, we would have been a bigger trading bloc. But that's not for me to, you know, these decisions were taken before I was born. So, yes. What can you do? there are many things out there. What I'm urging you to do, if you are in the UK and you are voting, and you should do this in any election, and I know the manifestos are a pinch of salt, but sometimes you're able to, able to get the message of what the people are thinking from what they actually write in these manifestos. Just remember pinch of salt theory. You are able to see what they're doing, what's, going through, basically, what's quite good. You are able to see, in some cases, because they now are fully costed the manifestos, you can see how the costs are going to go. I also think manifestos should all be released on the same day from all parties, because right now it gives the Conservatives time to be able to look at everyone else's manifesto and to change theirs to be more advantageous, because they're the last ones to put it out. I think basically there should be a day, and the release should all be done then, on the day. Like I said, Boris Johnson has cancelled the second leadership debate. However, he is doing question time tonight with the leaders of SNP, Joe Swinson from the Liberal Diocrats, and Nicola Sturgeon from the SNP, as I said, Joe Swinson from the Diocrats, Jeremy Corbyn from Labour, and Boris Johnson. Plaid Cymru aren't there. So, back to Welsh independence that you have here, Plaid Cymru aren't there. 2017 election, Plaid Cymru were there. 2015 election, Plaid Cymru were there. Shows, doesn't it, how much they actually care for Wales. A Welsh National Party isn't represented. Wales are electing to. We are no different than the SNP. Here it is. It's not like, Labour rule here, so, in our assembly, so that's good. But, once again, what I urge you to do is read all of the literature for an election. Oppose it like you would oppose an academic assignment. Come to it without an opinion. It's the best way to be. The only way that you can vote properly is don't get bound down by the rhetoric. Look, judge, read the information for yourself. Digest it, talk it over with your friends and family. Read the information. Digest the information. See and ask the question, who can give me a better life? Who can provide for my family, my friends, my community? So, like I said, that's what you need to think about on December 12th. Thank you for tuning in to Around the World today. A bit of a rant again, isn't it, really, about Welsh independence and the general election. I'll be back soon for another episode. I hope you have a lovely time. Okay, so God bless, peace be with you all, wherever you are in the world. Remember, you can email us, and it's radio@realtario.co.uk. Visit our website anytime. We've got many more different podcasts on there, and it's www.realtario.com. Or you can visit our Facebook, our Twitter. These are even on YouTube. We've got podcasts by Real Tario YouTube channel, or our Real Tario YouTube channel. More coming soon. Go to our Facebook group. If you go to the Real Tario Facebook page, www.realtario... Oh, no, it's not www.realtario. It's www.facebook.com/Real Tario. Go to community and then into the groups part, and it's Around the World Today. You can comment, you can listen to other podcasts, there are links in there. What else? Coming up, we're going to start our Christmas shows in December, so I'm looking forward to it. I will give you some Christmas shopping hints on our next podcast. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Podcasts brought to you by Real Terrio Radio. Around the world today here on Real Terrio Radio.